Hello and welcome all to Sponsors Symposium number 7, titled Deploying Scalable, Repeatable Researcher Workspaces with Simplified Chargeback. Today we look forward to introducing you to Health Data Nexus. My name is Mohammed Afal. I'm a customer engineer here at Google Cloud, primarily focused on healthcare and education within Canada from coast to coast. I'm thrilled to be a moderator as well as a presenter for this symposium, sponsored by Google Cloud at eHealth 2022. This session is going to consist of a live presentation, but we do also encourage you to put your questions in the chat. Hopefully we'll have time at the end to address those questions, and then also encourage you to connect with the speakers, myself, and Alistair following the session via the virtual event platform. I've had the privilege of working with Alistair at the Temerty Centre for Artificial Intelligence Research and Education in Medicine, also known as T-CAIREM, the University of Toronto, as they embarked on a journey to build a digital environment that facilitates collaboration using healthcare data. Let's get the conversation started around Health Data Nexus. We're gonna talk about some slides just to give you an overview of what Google Cloud is doing within the healthcare space, because this primarily does focus on research within health informatics, and then we'll also introduce you to the Health Data Nexus platform. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Alistair Johnson, scientist within Child Health Evaluative Sciences and Infrastructure Co-Lead at T-CAIREM, University of Toronto. Over to you, Alistair.
Yeah, hey everyone, it's nice to meet you. And I guess I'll take a moment to introduce T-CAIREM. If you can head over to the next slide, Mohammed. Basically, at T-CAIREM, it's a relatively new center at the University of Toronto, launched maybe last year or the year before. And the goal of these centers in general at University of Toronto is to bring together different fields, and T-CAIREM in particular is really trying to bring together these three themes that we've highlighted here in AI and medicine. So there's an education theme headed up by Laura Rosella, Philippe Morgado, and Vinyas Harish about just educating the next generation of doctors and scientists and engineers around AI, particularly in medicine. We have our research arm that's headed up by Anna Goldenberg and Jai Mazwi, who are encouraging grants in different AI and medicine initiatives. So recently there's some work funding ex vivo analyses of imaging data, crazy stuff like that. And then we have an infrastructure theme, which I co-lead with Sean Hill. And essentially, we'll focus on the infrastructure side of things, and I'll talk a little bit more about the need for this, but our real aim is to build a health data platform to support data sharing in medicine to really drive a lot of the AI tools that we would like to develop. And of course, this entire center is led by Mohammed Mamdani, who's our center director. Yeah. Back to you, Mo.
Awesome, thank you, Alistair. So couple of slides just to give the audience a quick overview. If you're not already familiar with some of this work that Google Cloud's doing within the healthcare space. So one of the things I'd like to emphasize on is healthcare is a priority at Google and Google Cloud, healthcare life sciences in general. And within Google Cloud, we're working to help organizations around the world visually transform and reimagine their business through data-powered innovation. And we'll touch on some, what that really implies. What tools are we bringing to market that help drive that? So some areas: deep healthcare and life science expertise. So in Google Cloud, we have a dedicated healthcare industry experts, panel advisors on HL7 as an example. And these are leading industry verticals focused on supporting healthcare providers, insurance providers, biopharma, and medtech organizations. And we've developed a number of first-to-market healthcare specific tools and services, such as our Cloud Healthcare API, which we're going to touch on, and deep variant genome analysis. And we're continuously launching more. We support you with a large cross-functional team of healthcare experts. Our teams are committed to working to advance the field of technology in healthcare. And this has resulted in over 100 health and bioscience research publications. And also, I'm part of Google Cloud, but if we look at the Alphabet ecosystem, so the best of Alphabet and healthcare partnerships, So in addition, across Alphabet, we have significant focus on healthcare with 57 operating investments, including Google Health, which you might have heard of. They're leading initiatives such as Care Studio, as an example, that's empowering search on top of your EHR. Verily, as well as other Google ventures. And we're tackling some of the world's biggest healthcare problems. And this can include chronic disease management with Verily, or solving for a protein folding problem with DeepMind. Now, specifically Google Cloud and some of the work that we're going to talk about, we have a suite of healthcare tools, and they're really aligned to help empower data interoperability and data accessibility through different personas. One of the differentiators also is the ability to support numerous native clinical standards. I've emphasized this a lot when I presented at other events, and the key there is that's going to empower you with near real-time analytics. Finally, there's a significant, something that's also worthwhile to mention, is a significant engineering presence in Waterloo. So within Canada, that's focusing on developing our healthcare cloud services, such as our healthcare API. And we have many public blogs to outline some of the digital transformation initiatives that are coming out of Canada. Now, also just a few more slides here on Google. So we aim, if we look at Google in general, we aim to meet people in everyday moments and support them across their health journey. And 3 out of 4 individuals turn to the internet as the first hop for information about health. And Google's got capabilities to meet people in their everyday moments and support them across their healthcare journey. That includes Google Search, YouTube, Fitbit for remote monitoring, Google Maps, Google Nest, and so on. So one is discovery. What am I experiencing? They turn to some of these tools here in order to perform some basic search. Understanding, what should I do? Should I see a doctor? Some of that actually, YouTube can play a significant role in that space. Deciding, where should I go? Leveraging Google Maps to find something that's in close proximity. Acting, choosing care or looking at other mechanisms such as remote patient monitoring or looking at vital signs and so on. So that's important. That paints a picture of the overview, sort of, being able to ingest and connect with individuals. Now, Google Cloud specifically, which is really the focus of our next couple of slides, because that's where we've enabled this platform to be built on top of, in partnership with Alistair and the T-CAIREM team, is that Google Cloud is significantly simplifying big data analytics. And we do that through a couple of different design principles. Serverless. So at the core of data-powered innovation is a suite of serverless services, including our healthcare API. If you're not familiar with the healthcare API, that supports numerous healthcare data standards, such as HL7v2. It has an associated API and store, so that implies raw storage of HL7v2, FHIR, and DICOM, as well as BigQuery, our serverless data warehouse. These services provide our customers with improved performance and elasticity. And we talk about research in the upcoming slides. Part of that, that means to access the data will be stored in BigQuery. A serverless data warehouse implies that we've decoupled storage from compute. No need to provision clusters upfront. That allows you to focus purely on the analytics rather than the infrastructure, that undifferentiated operational heavy lifting, removing that. Comprehensive. So Google Cloud provides a comprehensive set of core data analytics workloads, automated data transfer. We're going to talk about when you build this platform, some of the first entry point is that data ingestion. How do we get data in? So automated data transfer to extract data from your system and share data with federated querying across Google services. From data warehousing, that's central storage, to streaming data analytics, to data processing and preparation. We've got a wide ecosystem of serverless tools to help support that. Business intelligence to AI and ML. So services such as our healthcare data engine, if you haven't come across that already, bring that end-to-end portfolio of services through pre-built deployment templates that help deploy this into a secure cloud foundation on GCP. So we embed our advanced artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities to help you gain insights from clinical data and accelerate research and provide seamless patient and customer experiences. And this is visible. These ML capabilities are visible through tools such as our Cloud Healthcare NLP that performs entity extraction with a healthcare related context, Document AI for image quality detection, image classification, entity extraction, and so on. de-identification of FHIR and DICOM, so that content within the header file, in order to empower also research on de-identified data sets. That's also something where we have a pre-built model for that. Now, many of the data models that are empower healthcare research are open source. So open source is also something that's at the core here at Google. And we enable the best open source technologies to give you flexibility and choice in your data analytics projects, as well as portability. So there are over 2,000 projects currently in open source, including Kubernetes, leader in container orchestration, TensorFlow, the #1 machine learning repository on GitHub. And within the healthcare domain specifically, we also have several initiatives in open source, such as our whistle mapping language that helps our customers map HL7v2, CDA, or DICOM into FHIR. Finally, proven. When you look at some of these technologies, they require scale, but we accommodate customers of all sizes. And Google has been at the forefront of data analytics and ML innovation for the past 2 decades. Now, when we look at, one of the key questions is, where does my data reside? Where are these services running? So one thing I'd like to, assure you with is that we do have 2 cloud regions within Canada. And if you're not familiar with, the concept of a region, that implies multiple different zones. So highly resilient to failures, and you can deploy both the compute and the data within these given. Now, I am hearing some background noise, so if I could just kindly request mute, please. Perfect. Okay. So when building a platform on GCP to empower research, we need to ensure that the data is regionalized. Now, when we talk about security and some of the things that Alistair, brought to us as he was looking to explore this, how do you implement? There's implementation of organizational policies to ensure that no one deploys services to regions that do not comply with these organizational policies. So we ensure that any services that are being leveraged are within that given geography. So within Canada, as an example, and leveraging these 2 given regions. There's centralized visibility, and we have services such as Cloud Asset Inventory, which will capture a time series snapshot of what you've deployed in cloud. And its integration with tools such as Security Command Center can help proactively remediate any unintentional deployments to other regions. So once again, just peace of mind that data will reside in Canada, and there's 2 given regions within Canada that can help accommodate that. Now, data is complex within healthcare. It is very difficult. Various different types of data sources. Unstructured data accounts for the largest percentage of healthcare data, as an example, medical imaging. And that implies your storage repository that's going to handle this needs to be, able to scale. And that's why when we think about tying that back to serverless, the fact that decoupling storage from compute will provide you with that elasticity. There are numerous data sources and formats within healthcare and health informatics. And when you look at exploring, deployment of a research platform, you need to be able to support that, because there's lab data, unstructured clinical notes and outputs for medical dictation to capture, daily summaries and determine how providers make their diagnosis. There's non-medical data such as insurance information, patient demographics and social behaviors, sensory data and from fitness trackers and so on, or RPM devices. There's also on-premises databases, whether they're relational or NoSQL databases, medical images, genomics, and so on. So we need to be able to support these various different data modalities, and that's a major challenge when you look at adopting this on premises. And that's where really cloud can help provide that flexibility and scale to support the collection and integration of previously isolated data sources of various different modalities, then invoke harmonization of data, followed by empowering analysis. Now, what we're going to do next, so we've talked about Google, and what we've been doing in the space. Now we're going to specifically focus on the problem here. And the problem is building a trusted research environment, an environment that empowers collaboration and empowers accessibility to the underlying data, but also ensures that there's security. So let's further dive into the objective essentially of this presentation, which is deploying repeatable, secure, flexible research environments. And that was something that Alistair emphasized on, and having those repeatable secure deployments. So researchers currently right now are often constrained by legacy on-premises hardware. Looking back to that data, the data problem, that can be a major challenge to have compute power that can empower analytics on top of that. So it's really challenging right now sometimes with an on-premises model to meaningfully analyze those underlying data sets. And to speed up those turnaround times, scientists in data-driven fields are really looking for more efficient ways to share data and provision resources. And that's really the objective here. That's the outcome of this trusted research environment. And Google Cloud enables researchers to seamlessly scale up and down from 0 to thousands of concurrently running virtual machines, while requesting a wide array of state-of-the-art compute processing units. Based on the ML workflow that can require leveraging something like GPUs, or even if you're building with TensorFlow, one of the unique differentiators is the Google Cloud TPUs that help, so those are tensor processing units that help accelerate that machine learning workloads. And this can be all embedded as part of the flexibility within a trusted research environment. And a trusted research environment also implies the ability to seamlessly explore the data, invoke a query across multiple previously siloed data sources via a Jupyter notebook. You don't have to manage the underlying infrastructure for that Jupyter notebook, or even other tools that are part of the data scientist tool set, such as RStudio and so on. Leverage Python or R and generate those meaningful insights. You want to spend less time in the deployment phase or the access phase and more time in the analysis phase. So this implies the ability to collaborate with one another seamlessly. It also implies, and you'll see here what's outlined as a service perimeter. There are some, based on the data set requirements, there could be the need for air-gapped environments that don't have access to the internet. But specifically what we're going to touch on in upcoming slides was a design consideration around embedding a security perimeter. We're going to talk about the benefits of that. So that was, the problem statement that we're solving for, or Alistair specifically was looking to solve for. And building blocks. So let's take that, what we just talked about, and let's map that to building blocks of a trusted research environment. It includes data collection and storage. So the ability, once again, data grows at a very rapid rate. And if you convert from one format to another, that could be 2.5x. So ingestion is leveraging pre-built connectors to orchestrate the flow of data. The data foundation, that secondary aggregate data store that supports these different data formats, but will also support things like row, column, or tag-based access controls to define those granular permissions and privileges. Enable collaboration across the workspaces. That's where data sharing comes into play. We're going to talk about the concept of a perimeter bridge to allow that across the security perimeter. And then finally, generate actionable insights. And you do this all using a wide array of tools. Specifically within what we're going to be referencing to is going to be Jupyter and RStudio. Now, there are two options to do this. There are two approaches you can build a trusted research environment on cloud, but specifically in Google Cloud, you can take the approach of leveraging you're building your own platform or leveraging something that's already readily available by partners. And Alistair will chat about this, but this was a problem when we tackled building a trusted research environment. Can we leverage some of these pre-built partner offerings, or is there a need to leverage to build your own solution? And what were the problems that we were trying to solve for? And that's what we're going to highlight in upcoming slides. In case you're not familiar with it, there are some pre-built options available to you. There's Colab, that's a subscription-based environment. Unfortunately, though, it is limited in terms of guaranteeing those compute resources. There's Rad Labs, which is a cloud-native research development and prototyping solution developed within Google Cloud. However, one of the issues that that we're going to talk about in Health Data Nexus specifically is chargeback, and the need for Health Data Nexus, how it addresses that. So finally, is customer partner built air-gapped environments. There's several examples of customers that have embarked on this. And this is the approach that Alistair and team took by building their own environment in collaboration with partner ecosystem to do that. So over to you, Alistair, to highlight some of the challenges that you brought to the table.
Yeah, so we had a few core needs. Basically, the first was around billing. Billing is really hard to do just in general, and it's not something that, as a sort of a small center, we wanted to take on. We didn't want to have basically first level support to manage different currencies and different accounts. So we wanted some way of ensuring that researchers will pay for their own compute so that we're not on the hook for potentially very expensive compute. But at the same time, we're not responsible for managing invoices or anything like that. So that was something that was very important, just because we're trying to stay relatively, lean, and we have a very small team. And the second need is around security. So we wanted to keep our data in the cloud and not allow egress. That was sort of a very important part of the design of the trusted research environment, because it's a lot easier for many reasons if you always have access to be able to either update, potentially delete the data and have that instantly apply to all users of the data. So that was a very important part of it, and ensuring that that sort of fence around the platform exists. Around governance of the data, we wanted to establish this process that researchers could come into the platform, be onboarded, and have very clear ideas of who has access to which data sets, how are they approved, where are the agreements involved in demonstrating that, in case, for example, we want to demonstrate to some individuals if we're audited or something along those lines. Oh, here's who's accessing what and why. And then finally, we want to be able to really scale to all the different types of analyses that researchers can do. So we can have a very fixed and rigorous infrastructure where all you can do is sort of run these specific software libraries that we want. We want to be able to start with a pretty reasonable and flexible set of types of analyses packages that you can use, but very quickly be able to expand that to add in new libraries as individuals create them, discover them. And so we want to be able to quickly expand the type of analyses we enable on the platform. So those were the sort of four main needs that we were considering when trying to build this platform. Yeah. Mohammed, you're on mute.
All right, so let's map some of those needs and requirements to solution areas. So first of all, in terms of billing, so GCP billing is outside the project. And if you're not familiar with the concept of a project, so most cloud providers might refer to as an account. We choose a project as that area of isolation where resources are deployed to. So we make it easier, and actually I'm going to explain that in an upcoming slide. So we simplify chargebacks by eliminating potential issues, the need for invoicing or handling payment methods, that can be, require additional security and so on. We'll highlight the benefits of decoupled. So there's a concept of a payment profile that's a little bit unique, that's decoupled from the billing account. Next is security. We're going to talk about this. So a dedicated slide to VPC service controls. That's really intended to mitigate data exfiltration. Governance, so centralized logging, observability, tools of monitoring. Those were things that were embedded within these pre-built deployment modules to deploy this environment. And the ability to alert, issues such as data residency and enforcement and so on. Now, infrastructure as code was also is also key. So two different deployment methods. One is Terraform, and that was the chosen infrastructure as code language here. And one of the things that we've done too, just overall within Google Cloud in Canada, is to help comply with Government of Canada Cloud Operationalization Framework. We've created guardrails to implement preliminary secure baselines, set of controls within your cloud environment, along with guardrail validation tools to provide a faster validation process. We've also provided a PHIPAA white paper, which you can go ahead and map those controls to items within Google Cloud that you can deploy as part of your cloud foundation. Now, no need to get into this. I'm sure the audience is well versed with many of the benefits of Jupyter Notebooks, but one of the key things is you will not need to manage any of the underlying infrastructure. It's managed Jupyter Hub in cloud with the ability to access any of the underlying GCP services. So as an example, If data is hosted in BigQuery, our serverless data warehouse for analytics, or it's hosted in Google Cloud Storage because it's imaging, or healthcare API because it's, once again, DICOM imaging, that connection is going to be private. Things like Private Service Connect will ensure that you're traversing our backbone, that communication is not going outbound to the internet, and seamless integration with any backend GCP services. So that's going to help empower easily building, training, and deploying these modules. And this is part of the pre-built deployment modules as part of a trusted research environment. So talked about this, some of the security requirements. So to enhance security, the need to build a secure service perimeter is illustrated in this image here. There's the concept of a service perimeter. The service perimeter defines a higher trust boundary and associated security policies intended to mitigate data exfiltration. So service perimeters are defined with something we call VPC service controls as part of the secure cloud foundation. And this is something that was embedded within Health Data Nexus. They outline the Google Cloud projects where resources are deployed, and that is a secure perimeter. You outline also the services that are trusted, and if you attempt to communicate with anything outside that service perimeter, that will be denied. So if you attempt to copy data to a public bucket, as an example, on object storage, that will be rejected, or to a VM that's from outside of the service perimeter, that would also be rejected. These are created using pre-built deployment modules as well. Additionally, something called context-aware access that can be configured. That grants access to workstations outside this trusted cloud perimeter boundary on well-defined client attributes, going back to that zero trust architecture. So, which we have a service for, which is beyond core. So individual researchers can be associated with a single perimeter, and data sharing among researchers can be enabled through creating a perimeter bridge. That will allow communication between two different service perimeters. Essentially, think of it as a one-to-one mapping between the researcher and the service perimeter. And now you're enabling collaboration, but securely with these predefined deployment modules. Now, the next thing I emphasize we'll talk about is simplifying chargeback, because this is really interesting. So we simplify the chargeback process by making the payment profiles external to the billing accounts. We think most other CSPs will tag the payment within the billing account, but when you have this external sort of relationship and you've decoupled it, they aren't dependent on your Google Cloud organization. It means as a pre-workflow, customers can create a payment profile, researchers can create a payment profile before logging onto the research environment, provide you the identification of that payment profile, and then you can associate with the billing account. That billing account is where resources are going to be associated with and charged back to, but essentially you will not need to manage the payment methods because that's all part of a pre-built workflow with an external payment profile. Encourage you to take a look at this and explore this because it's definitely a very interesting approach. And with that, I'd like to pass it back to you, Alistair.
Yeah, so why are we sort of building this platform? I guess it's very important to say. I mean, it was something that we identified quite early as researchers coming into Canada. It's very, very difficult to access health data, really. And when you do access it, you very often have limited compute. I know of some computing centers which have large data sets and one GPU to share among all the researchers using it. So there's this dual challenge of one, it's very difficult and unclear how to access health data that you'd like to use for research to improve the health of everyone in locally here in Ontario, but hopefully everywhere in Canada and the world. And then beyond that, when you do access the data, you sort of struggle to actually use it because you're competing for very, very, very finite resources. So we intended to build this data platform to really fix these two issues, to have a very scalable compute platform where you can basically just ship that problem off to Google Cloud, and they're very good at infrastructure. They're better at it than I am, so that's great. And then at the same time, we can manage the governance and make a very clear governance process for, oh, here's how you're accessing the health data set, here's who can access it, here's the sort of approach for doing it, and here's a very clear description to you as a researcher of how you would go about in accessing a given health data set. So yeah, I think next slide. So this ends up with sort of two benefits, but basically for the data holders who would like to share data, who would like to see their data used to benefit both the patients that it may correspond to or the individuals that it may correspond to, but also hopefully people beyond that, they would receive sort of free data hosting, and they would receive credit for the publication of a data set, which is scientifically very valuable, sort of the currency of academia, so to speak. A lot of the challenges and the unique knowledge required in managing health data, we can help them with. So there's quite a few people who might be purely medical who have ended up collecting a very useful registry. They don't really know how they would host it on the cloud. They don't really know any of those technical steps, and we're able to sort of provide that expertise to them and guide them through a very clear process and ensure that the way that they're sharing data on the platform is ethical and correct and following all the sort of rules. And then on the other hand, for data users, we're providing a sort of a public index of, oh, here are the various data sets which are available, providing a very clear mechanism of how an individual can access a data set. And we are providing this sort of secure infrastructure where people can get up and running within 5 to 10 minutes if they'd like. So next slide, please. So here's sort of a very high level view of the infrastructure. So we have the health, what we're calling the Health Data Nexus, and that's sort of sitting there in the middle. And we have our data holders who are essentially publishing data on this platform. It's more or less equivalent to a sort of a data publishing platform. So they'll come in with a data set which has been de-identified, and they'll go through a well-defined process with our data stewards and our analytics team to ensure the data is reusable, that it complies with sort of FAIR principles in that it's accessible and interpretable and all these important components. And then on the other side, we have our researchers and our data users who will come to the Health Data Nexus website, who will look through the different data sets available. And we have 3 mechanisms for access, where in the first zone, it's sort of the most broadest available zone that we have, where use of the data requires a data use agreement, and we'll get into some of those details, all the way to the most restrictive zone, where you actually need RAB approval because the data set contains data which we cannot confidently say is de-identified. So that's kind of the high level view. If we go to the next slide, we can dig into some of the individual perspectives. So our data contributor, they may be a hospital, they may be a registry, they may be a consortium. So they will have some useful, impactful data set they would like to unlock for the research world. They think there could be a lot of value in using. So they submit that data set to our team. We sort of review it. We give suggestions on how to reorganize it to make it more usable, to make it more analyzable. We highlight gaps from our sort of knowledge of similar data sets of information that would be crucial for doing a real analysis that they don't include, that they should go back and bring in. Once we've gone through this sort of review process, we have a data governance committee which review the data set. We bring in domain experts, we bring in patient representatives, we bring in other technical and medical expertise to discuss the data set, make sure that it's sort of ready for publication. Then once it's ready for publication, there's a sort of a public descriptor of the data set, which everyone in the world can read, and then a clear outlining of how individuals will access it. And of course, we know that this will sort of enable both research and education initiatives. Next slide. So if we switch over to the researcher view, so this is now I want to go to the platform. I'd like to use some data set, some data on the platform. I have a great research idea. So the first step is really we credential the researchers. So none of our data sets are open data at all. They all require sort of registered access. So the first step is that you need to verify that you're an individual, that you're not a robot, essentially. So our mechanism of doing this is to authenticate with some trusted institute. In this case, we're starting off with the University of Toronto. So you must be some affiliate of the University of Toronto in order to even log into the platform, where planning to extend that to Canada-wide through CAF and Canary this year. So we have a sort of verifying the individual step. We also have a code of conduct which each individual has to agree to about sort of the rules about participating and using the data set. Using any data set on the platform. Once you sort of have an account and you're on the platform, your next step is to find that data set. So you're going to go through an application process where you provide proof that you've taken appropriate training for research with human subjects or human participants. So that's a TCPS 2 course is sort of the typical one that's most people who are doing medical research, they've actually already taken and they're keeping this up to date. So we just require proof that you've done that, but certain databases may require other specific training. So it's possible that if you're working with a specific group, there may be a particular training for analyzing their data, particular concerns around past sort of data analyses that have been done. So there's a step of demonstrating that you're both an individual and then that you're sort of capable and aware of all the important factors of analyzing data from real humans. And once you've sort of done that, there's a data use agreement, which is sort of a click-through agreement that says, hey, don't be a bad guy, more or less. And there's a consistent template across it. You won't try to re-identify individuals. You won't try to re-identify organizations. If you see anything that's incorrect, you'll report it to the team. And once that's done, you are given access to a sort of a scalable compute through right now a Jupyter Notebook running on Vertex AI on GCP, and that has direct access to the data set, and that's within this VPC perimeter that Mohammed was mentioning earlier. And yeah, and I think actually when we're on that point, we can move to the next slide and you can talk more about the exact architecture, Mohammed.
Perfect. So actually, we've just for the sake of time, omitted the architecture, but
okay.
one of the things I'd like to highlight is that, you know, we looked at integration with the external IDP. We looked at also that centralized logging, monitoring, ensuring that we have predefined templates that have been created to align with some of the requirements here of Healthcare Data Nexus to ensure repeatability. So that every time we have a new researcher that's coming on board or a new data set that's going to be ingested, then that could be automated and orchestrated seamlessly. So that encompasses a wide array of services. To give you an example, we have an API gateway in the middle of this solution, which then calls out to Cloud Functions, which is our serverless sort of serverless function as a service execution code, which will go ahead and then deploy the Terraform templates using a automated pipeline. So once again, emphasizing on repeatable, secure deployment modules that provide simplicity in terms of spinning this up. And I'm going to emphasize once again on that external managing payments and having to bring in a third-party solution for chargeback is a complex task. I've been in the cloud space for some time. That's definitely complex. So having that payment profile as a prerequisite where anyone external to your organization can create that once they've been granted access explicitly, provide you with that payment profile ID, mapping that to the billing account really simplifies that process. So what are the outcomes of building a trusted research environment is, so I'll start with the first one, the ability to take a longitudinal view. If you're able to ingest these various different data sources that were previously siloed, you can perform a single query across various different, previous data modalities that have been harmonized, as well as, perform a joint operation with external public data sets, all from within one central location. And that really provides you that ability to take a longitudinal view. As an example, if you're looking at a patient, you're incorporating things from medical record, or you're incorporating things from social determinants of health, and so on. So lots of benefits there. Over to you, Alistair, for number 2, line management.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, pretty important just to get out of the way of the researcher. That's basically what we're trying to do. And we're trying to make sure we do all the right things by the data and the individuals for whom the data corresponds to, but also at the same time, allowing for researchers to actually do the research that they want to do. And a lot of other mechanisms really restrict individuals from actually doing any kind of reasonable compute, especially with some of the models nowadays where they are truly massive and getting some truly exceptional results. Right now in research, you are completely unable to apply those because most of the time the infrastructure just isn't there. So by acknowledging that, we're a university or a center within a university which would not be able to really keep up with these, large tech companies, right? It makes sense to just take advantage of that work that's already happening. So that's sort of number two. Number three is really about sort of simplifying the data access. And this is something that we pursued quite heavily, that everything should be sort of very clear to the individual, what is going on, how would I get access, and what are the steps to do this. And we don't want them to be signing various forms and doing A and B and C. So being able to have our sort of platform, which clearly says, oh, here's the data set, here are the steps that you do, and afterwards send the user off into the secure GCP perimeter with the notebook instance or whatever it is already spun up, already connected to the data, with the data already mounted there. It just makes life a lot easier, really reduces that friction to researchers from actually being able to get their hands onto the data, which will accelerate their research quite a lot. I don't know if you want to cover
Thank
that.
you. And finally is the ability to comply with healthcare security and data privacy regulations. We understand that probably if you're looking to explore this, you're going to conduct a privacy impact assessment or threat risk assessment. How do we help work with you in order to ensure that's as least effort, although it is a significant effort, but in terms of making sure that we equip you with guardrails, enforcement policies in place as part of that cloud foundation to help cater to your security requirements. Also want to emphasize that, obviously all our services are aligned to HIPAA, but we please encourage you to take a look at our PHIPAA white paper. And also we do have something called our Healthcare Data Protection Toolkit that also provides secure cloud foundation for specifically healthcare data. So I encourage you to take a look at that. We've open sourced that. So please encourage you. I know we're at time here. Appreciate your time. We at Google Cloud really appreciated the opportunity to work with Alistair and his team and address some of the challenges that they brought to the table. Just before I go ahead and close this off, Alistair, anything else you'd like to say?
Oh, thanks. It's been great. And if anyone has a friend who has a health data set they'd like to publish in a secure and safe way, you know where to go now.
Awesome. So thank you very much for joining this sponsor symposia. And as we continue eHealth 2022, everyone can now move to the closing keynote session, accessed at the top of the virtual event platform for an engaging presentation by Dr. Brad, the healthy humorist. So thank you all and have a great afternoon and evening.